Our first ranking video, let's go! Hey there! We are a pair of Basic Liches. We are two D&D Dungeon Masters for 5th edition, and today we're going to be taking the most popular house rules for D&D 5th edition, and we're going to be ranking them on how useful they are or fun they are. Or maybe they just kind of stink.
And these are our personal opinions about these house rules. We're not sort of rating them based on like how we think they might work at your table or not. It's just, these are our gut feelings on these rules. That's what we're trying to get across.
And we've tried a lot.
Yeah, we like to tinker.
So starting with our S tier, this tier is going to be the rules that we just incorporate into every game we play now because they're just so damn good. We forgot that we even added them. We kind of think that they're part of the core rules. We're like, oh, wait, that wasn't core rule. We play with them so much and we love them. That's our S tier. Then we're gonna have tiers A, B, C, and D. Tier A is going to be some solid choices that don't really have many downsides. Our tier B is going to be a house rule that maybe fixes a specific problem or enriches it a little bit, but could have some effects on the rules or the game, and maybe we just kind of hand wave it and don't care. Then our tier C is basically going to be our on the fence tier, where we don't know if this may be causing more problems than it is causing fun. We'd like to have, we're not having much fun with it. It's kind of the meh tier. And for D tier or lowest tier, it either just isn't very fun or has some game-breaking implications.
Some of these house rules come from Chapter 9 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Dungeon Master's Workshop. We will be including these variant rules as sort of house rules because they are not how you would play the game with rules as written, which is kind of what this whole video is about. Like Kmo mentioned in the intro, these house rules, these are the ones when we researched, they kept coming up over and over again. They might have slightly different names than what you've seen before, but we will try to explain them. We will paraphrase what we think that they mean, and we will rank them, assigning them a lovely, lovely letter.
First rule, let's talk about XP to level 3.
Jacob?
Jacob. I love the name of his channel because it's basically telling you that we are veteran players. This is a very common rule for veteran players, people who are used to playing RPGs, because they might think that levels 1 and 2 are too easy or too boring at this point, and want to even speed up their campaign a little bit by starting at level 3. What do you think about starting at level 3?
I don't necessarily have a problem with this. I don't really do it myself.
Yeah.
At my tables, I don't doing it. I like lower level play because I like it to be a little bit dangerous. I like it when player characters die sometimes.
Oh, it's volatile as hell.
It's very volatile at level 1, and that reminds me of older editions of D&D or like a lot of other sort of fantasy role-playing games that I play besides 5e. So I don't mind that. What I do dislike is staying at lower levels for too long.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be in first or second level for more than like 2 or 3 sessions.
No.
So I don't have a really problem with this. For me, this is probably like a B or an A tier for me.
I think so too. Maybe it belongs in A because it's kind of that solid choice. Not really many downsides. We're just kind of speeding things up by about 15 to 30 play hours.
And you said it's mostly for veteran players. I think if you're new players, don't do this.
No.
Just
because it's the perfect amount of time to get them acclimated to their class.
Yeah, you're sort of learning stuff. You want to learn how all of your abilities work, if you have spells, how all that stuff's going to work. Lower level D&D can be really fun. It's before like you have all these superpowers and you have to just you can just fix stuff with abilities. You actually have to use your brain and be like, we're going to use rope and equipment and chalk and all this weird crap that's in the player's handbook. So we'll put this A.
Yeah,
We'll put
there you go, Jacob. Solid A.
A tier, baby.
You're a 10 in my book, baby.
We love you, Jacob. Ah. Session leveling up. Leveling up per sessions. So what we're going to be doing now is getting rid of the XP system that comes with 5e. And instead, you look at the level that you are. So if you're at level 1 and you play 1 session of D&D, you're going to level up to level 2. And then when you're at level 2, that counter resets to 0. So you have to play 2 sessions at level 2 to gain another level. And then at 3rd level, you have to play 3 sessions to gain 3rd level, and so on. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So basically the level that you're at is how many sessions that you have to play in order to level up.
That's really dang cool. That's really cool. I really like the idea that I never played this way, but it kind of makes me want to play this way. You could even change this up to be like the sessions that you need to get to the level that you want too. I feel like that mindset is kind of cool. Like I want to get to level 2, so I need to play 2 sessions. You could even do it that way. You're just knocking out one session.
It's the same principle. So instead, you're not using experience points.
Yeah.
I think this is a B tier because it's fixing a specific problem of the game, which is the XP system, which some players don't like.
But it could have some implications that we're just going to...
Well, because then you have to think about, okay, so if Johnny misses sessions and Tracy's been here for every session, do we level up separately? Do we do it at the same time? I would just level it up separately, but leave that's up to you. That's a you problem.
That might make the disparity a little bigger, honestly. If someone is missing quite a few sessions and we're in early levels, someone might be level 6 and someone might be level 3.
It might be. So. But if you're missing games, do you really deserve to have a character that's the same level as everyone else?
That's true.
I know a lot of people are militant about making sure that the party level is exactly the same. I don't really care about that. I've never had a problem running that at my tables, but your mileage may vary, of course.
So it's an okay B. The next popular rule is the milestone leveling up system. This is where the DM is going to be handing out experience based on milestones that are completed in the campaign, specific story arcs or campaign missions.
So this is, again, getting rid of the experience point system, and basically the Dungeon Master chooses when to level you up. So if you guys are not completing the story, if you're not pushing the story arc forward, the Dungeon Master really has no reason to level you up. It's basically up to their discretion. And you're not seeing actual, like, XP points, right? Most Dungeon Masters are like, hey, you guys are level 4 now. This is like sort of an official ruling now, because a lot of the later adventure modules that Wizards has published, even the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, that has what they call milestone XP. And when you complete a chapter in that adventure, it just tells you to level everybody up. It doesn't say anything about XP. So that's basic. So you're not seeing XP, you're not ever earning it. I think that's basically what it's evolved into.
We've started with milestone, and I've really started to strongly dislike milestone leveling up and experience, and because it happens. Milestone eventually turns into that thing where a DM is just going to tell players when they level, and players have no concept of when it's going to happen, and that can create just animosity. I mean, it's like you're building your character and you want to get somewhere with it. Maybe it's not creating animosity, but it's not, giving you the level of hype that you would need or excitement to level up. Like you're looking forward to something and you don't know when that's coming. So it's like, well, it could come whenever.
Yeah, I've played in a lot of tables. This is primarily like if I'm not a dungeon master at a lot of tables that I play at, milestone XP or milestone leveling up, is how it works. It's arbitrary. It's not arbitrary. Essentially, when we complete a quest or something happens, we all sort of look at the dungeon master. Do we level up? Not yet. Or, yeah, you guys go to level 3 or level 6, whatever it is. I'm going to be frank. I hate milestone leveling advancement. I hate it. A lot of tables that I play at use it. And the reason I really don't like it is because I view experience points as sort of the carrot that the Dungeon Master is dangling in front of players to get them to do adventures, go on quests, be heroic. I understand why people want to get rid of XP. It's because it's a whole system that you have to track, and getting rid of that, it takes a lot of plate off the Dungeon Master.
You can make it very simple by getting rid of it, and you can keep everyone on the same equal level playing field the whole time.
Correct. That is the primary reason that people do it. The reason I hate it, again, is I play a lot of other systems that are not 5th edition, and XP, it's that carrot. It's that thing that sort of, it's like, hey, if you guys do this, then you're going to be earning XP. And you have to tell them what they're earning experience points for. I sort of sometimes do it in-game to let them know, be like, and I award XP for a lot of stuff. That's another little mini house rule within this, but I do it sometimes in session. I know you like it at the end. If I do it at the end, I make sure I tell them what they're earning XP for, so that they're like, oh, cool, I didn't know that by doing that, I'm going to earn points.
Yeah.
Because like you sort of alluded to, when you see that number and you're just like, oh, I know I need to be like, I only need 200 more XP to get to the next level. It's so much more. You're like, I can taste it. Like, it makes you want to play D&D more. If you have no idea, you just show up to the session and you're just like, okay.
That's what I've found playing a lot of milestone games is I feel unmotivated to continue because I like to level up. I like to grow in power, and I don't know when that's happening. This can vary depending on how well you do the milestone system. So it could be, to me, it could be a B or a D. So I think it falls on C.
My gut, I want to give it a D for me.
But you can
really
do this
hate
right, and you can make things easy at the table, and like it hurts motivation for players, definitely.
But I'll aggravate more people if I say D.
No. D it is.
No.
Give it the D.
Sure, I'm fine with it being like a C.
A C?
It's fine.
What is our C is
a D anyway.
Tendency to create more problems than fun.
Yeah, yes, that's fine.
You know,
I don't think it's broken by any stretch of the imagination. I just don't care for it.
Yeah.
C tier for you, milestones.
Sorry.
Get out of here. Let's talk about minions, something that comes from 4th edition, and I think it actually spawned in the Feng Shui role-playing game. I might be wrong about that. But essentially, minions are enemies that they have all of their stats, all of their abilities, but they have one single hit point. They take one hit, and then they die. That is what a minion is.
I love the idea because I love the idea of D&D being a little more cinematic. And when you have a rogue that's undercover trying to infiltrate something and is sneaking around and backstabbing guards and getting past everyone, like that's what you want to feel as a rogue. Or if you're in the middle of a heated, massive battle and you just want to portray this chaos of like swinging swords and people are just dying everywhere, then you need the kind of minion role to be able to portray that.
I'm a big fan of minions. I actually never thought to use them for like a guard or something, but yeah, if you just need a guard that is just like a person that's like a pair of eyes to see if they spot stuff, that's a perfect spot to make a minion because again, I hate it when you're like, oh, I backstab and I slit this guy's throat and you're like, you only did 15 damage. They have 24.
He's not even bloodied yet.
But he wasn't paying attention and you stabbed him right in the throat. Yeah, that makes perfect
sense. It's like Skyrim and they have their throat is open and bleeding. They're like, what was that? Must have been the wind.
I'm gonna vote to put minions in the S tier. I think it's something that doesn't really create a lot of problems. It's a simple rule, and like you said, it's good to add for like a boss encounter. You can have a bunch of other little minions running around that just die in one hit.
I think as long as it's like a lot of the same creature, right, with the same stat, you just have one little block about it.
Yep.
Then it's easy S tier. Then we've got the proficiency dice roll. This house rule was turned into a variant rule in DMG, page 263, and it basically turns our flat proficiency number into a dice that we roll. So from levels 1 to 4, we're going to be rolling a d4, and that levels up as we level up. Like the dice increases in dice value, like it'll be a d6 later when we start leveling up and so on.
I like the idea, and this is actually rolled in all pillars of play. So you would be rolling, if you're attacking, you're actually going to be rolling a d20 and a d4.
Every time.
So if you're at like 3rd level, I think, you're still rolling a d4. So it gives you a little bit, sometimes you're doing a little bit better, sometimes you're doing a little bit worse.
And we did try this.
We have tried this. We tried this with the next rule that we're also going to be talking about, and I fucked things up. It didn't go well. Just doing this alone, I think, is fine. I think it's interesting. I think
if you could end up getting more proficiency than your base at any given time, or less.
Or less. And I think people like rolling more dice. I just think you have to have players that are like, if you're brand new players, they're like, well, why am I rolling the d4 plus the d20?
Yeah.
I don't hate this. I don't love this. It's something that's like fun to tinker around with. I think it's it's almost mid. It's like B or C.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's kind of B tier where
it's like right there in the middle.
It's not really taking away much and not really breaking rules much, but
it's just adding randomization to something that is normally a flat bonus that you're always going to get.
Yeah. Take it or leave it. It's a B.
Next, we have background proficiency. This is on page 264 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. This is going to scrap all the skills in the game. No one is going to have any skills checked off on their character sheet. You get rid of skills. They're gone. Bye. You do instead is, as a Dungeon Master, you tell your players before the campaign starts, session 0, whatever, that in order for them to get their proficiency bonus for certain roles, they have to sort of convince the Dungeon Master that their character would be good at doing the action that they're attempting based on their background or maybe their class. For instance, if you were a noble, that was your background, and you were trying to gain audience with a king, you could try to convince the Dungeon Master, be like, hey, because I'm a noble, I'm good at hobnobbing around with royalty, I should get my proficiency bonus, I should get a plus to this roll. In which case they would say, yes.
I see what this rule is trying to create. There is that instance where you have these skill proficiencies and you feel like your character would be good in a certain way because of like what their backstory was or
Correct, yes.
What their knowledge is about stuff. But I have a 0 in Arcana or something. But I would know something specific about this topic.
Yep.
But to me, I feel like you can just do this without removing the skill checks. Like, why do we need to remove the skill checks to do this? Like, I can just say, if a player thinks that they would be able to do this, sure, add your proficiency to the roll. Why can't it be like that?
I think it's used to encourage role-playing and sort of simplify the skill system, make that a little bit more easy for new players, more palatable. I would say limiting it to the background, because if you start adding in your backstory, you could then have the uber munchkin player that is just going to be like, I did this in my background.
I trained in 4 different bard schools, colleges, and
like Van Wilder that's in college for like 20 years, just learning everything. I really like this because this is essentially how like the skill system in Dungeon Crawl Classics works, because you start off as a level 0 peasant, and you're like I'm good at this because I was an accountant. Or I was a farmer, so I know about plants and stuff, or I know about animal handling and husbandry.
But I think it doesn't work in 5e because of the numerous classes and feats and other abilities that have to do with ability checks.
It gets worse as you level up.
Yeah.
It's weird.
So maybe it just doesn't really work in 5e.
I just wasn't, it didn't work well at the table. I think this is a D. I would really advise against doing this. Just play Dungeon Crawl Classics instead.
Yeah, if you want to play it where it works well, do Dungeon Crawl Classics.
You need it, because it works in DCC because that's a simple system, right?
Yes.
There's stuff going on, but your character sheet is very basic.
Yep.
You don't have a list of skills on there, so you don't have to be like, hey guys, X out that whole section and just play Dungeon Crawl Classics in general. It's a really great game.
Yeah.
Check out my video for it. Link in the description.
First level feats. At first level, any character can choose any of the feats from the feat list. This is usually reserved for the variant human race, but everyone plays with it. Everyone picks one at start. I think this is good. I mean, they started adding this to 1D&D rules as a normal thing, and this is already a Pathfinder thing. Have we played with this yet? Have we?
I've played it. I've played with. Actually, yes, I did. I think we were running like the. Yes, we have.
First level feat game.
Yep.
Yeah,
we did that. I've come around on this.
Yeah.
It was something where I was like, I don't want my players to be super powerful, but you know what? D&D is a superhero game.
It is.
It's too late. It's what it is.
Yeah.
There are other systems that are gritty. Go play those instead. D&D is a superhero game, and I think that you should have more options and more control over the way that you want to build your character, because there's not a lot of that in 5e anyways.
And it sets you apart from other players that might be the same class. But it really starts to add personality to your character. That's what feats do in general.
Yeah.
So to have that at first level just makes it fun. And doesn't add too much game-breaking power to level 1.
Yeah. I mean, there are some broken-ass feats
in
5e, but that's just the game, baby. Don't hate the game, hate the player.
It's very true. That's very true.
I don't have a problem with it.
No. Yeah, I guess it's not really.
The only reason I guess I'd put it at B is if is if you are getting into those like people that are really good at optimizing characters.
Yeah.
But then you're just like punishing player, like, I don't know.
Punishing players for making good choices.
Right?
You can't ever control the metagamers.
Yeah.
So they're going to do it.
I mean, it's funny because like you and I are like, we would never do that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Like for the most part, we're just like, this makes more sense for my character to have this.
But it's like if you knew you had a ton of metagamers in your game, you wouldn't use this house rule.
Probably not, no.
So yeah, it's A.
A, we're landing at an A.
We're doing A for this.
Okay, we went A. So let's drop it in there. The next house rule is damage inspiration. This is when players are awarded a point of inspiration. Instead of using it for advantage, they can use it to re-roll a damage die that they rolled.
Is it just one die, or is it all the die? Like, what if we have a fireball that we would want to re-roll?
I would say one die.
One, that makes sense. If it's a one die, it's not so bad. If it's the entire damage roll, I think it's a little too much.
I don't know. I don't really. I wouldn't personally ever use this. It's not something I'm like super jazzed about. I would try to do more interesting things with inspiration than this. And I'm thinking about it both ways, all dice or one dice. I don't really care either way. Just because I feel like inspiration is something that's always forgotten. It's never used at the table.
Yeah.
I don't know. B.
B.
I don't care about it. It's fine. It's B. It's not gonna break anything too bad.
It's meh.
You can make it the more powerful version or the more restrained one.
Yeah, it's like you use it if you want.
Meh.
Meh. Next up is a rule for rolling criticals. This is, I feel like, everyone's favorite rule to use, and maybe not even know that it's not a core thing. But a lot of people call it something different. Improved criticals, critical insurance, crunchy crits, the Perkins crit. This has basically been used since the 70s. Like, nobody owns it. Nobody knows who created it, just like the internet. We call them 1DMCs, 1 die max crits. So when you make a critical, one of the die is going to be at max value. This basically makes it so that when you roll a critical, it feels like a critical. You don't want to roll a critical and then go to roll damage and you roll ones on all the damage dice. It feels bad. Mm-hmm. You know, it was supposed to be a good hit. We crit. So at least having one of the die automatically be max just makes it feel fun. Mm-hmm. It continues the fun and you don't feel let down by a crit.
I agree. No, I am all about making critical successes cooler and better in 5e, and I love this rule. I always tinker with criticals because, like you said, if you roll, you're like swinging your great axe. You're like, I'm rolling 2d12s, and you roll 2 points of damage plus your strength modifier. You're like, that sucked!
That wasn't a critical.
Feels so bad when that happens. So yes, I'm all about using this. It's very simple to implement. I think this is a slam dunk of a S tier.
That's an S tier
that you're gonna get.
You forget that it's even not a core rule.
We're not done with criticals yet. We're going to be talking about critical hit tables and critical failure tables. This happens when you roll a natural 1 or a natural 20 in combat. You're going to refer to a chart that the Dungeon Master has, and they are going to have you roll on this chart, and then they're going to narrate some sort of random result, either a boon or bane, based on if it's a critical or a fumble. Some people just use a deck of cards for this. They have like critical effect cards. Same deal. Some Dungeon Masters don't even rely on a table or cards. They actually will just use inspiration based on the situation and sort of narrate something that happens. That's sort of what we're getting at here. Essentially, on top of getting your critical fumble or your critical success, something really good's going to happen, or they're going to narrate something really crappy happening.
I really like this as long as you're either using a table, or it really depends on the table or the deck that you're using. You know, make sure that you're using a deck of cards for the system, for 5e. But I would say it really kind of only just adds, and I've played other systems like the Genesis system. This is just in the dice rolling constantly. On the dice are critical success and critical fail face values.
Symbols.
And when they come up, things are supposed to happen, you know? So it really turns this game into that narrative playstyle dice system.
Yeah, you're letting the dice have a little bit more narrative impact than they
Yeah.
do rules as written. I'm a big fan of this. Again, I like tinkering with criticals. I like tinkering with fumbles. And I love Dungeon Crawl Classics, which is basically an entire game of randomized tables and charts. I love rolling on those things, but be aware that they can be very swingy. And yes, you have to sort of know what can happen in those. For my 5e games, I've stopped using tables and I just improvise what is happening, because I know a lot of players hate this because, one, if you're rolling a critical fumble, it feels bad in general.
Yeah.
And then they feel like the dungeon master is punishing them on top of that. I try not to do that. I try to make it I try to add complications. I try to add narrative things there. So it's not going to be like your weapon is constantly breaking, or you stabbed yourself in the leg and shot an arrow into your foot or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes the bowstring will break, but sometimes it's like, oh, that skeleton that you thought you already killed over there, it starts to reanimate and it gains back a few hit points. That's a little bit of a complication that might happen.
I think this is really better if it's more under the DM's control. Mm-hmm. Because if you're using something like a table or a card, and we are rolling on those tables or drawing those cards every time we get these crits and fumbles, then specific classes that roll more are going to be swingier.
You're punished.
On this.
You have more
either
chances.
Punished more, or succeed more. So if this type of thing is more within the DM's control of when it happens, like maybe it doesn't always happen on a critical success that some kind of event happens, but if it's under the DM's control, that's where it's better.
Yeah. And I will sometimes toss it to my player. If they get a critical success, I'll be like, all right, I'm going to give you a little bit of a bonus here. What do you think this attack does? And if they go too crazy with it, I'll sort of meet them halfway. They're like, I lop off 3 heads. And I'm like, maybe you get through 1, and I'll roll a Constitution save to see if the second head is still attached. Work with your players. I think that's the best way to implement this. Tables are good because you don't have to improvise, or maybe you just have a list of tables so that you can have things that you can pick from. I think it can be S tier if you're comfortable and you're good at improvising and just adding minor complications and little bonuses to the hits, the critical hits.
Yeah.
And I try to add things that make sense to what is happening during play. So if you're an elf and you're shooting your arrow and you're firing into melee and you roll a 1, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to hit the dwarven cleric. I think that makes sense. I don't think anybody at the table will complain about that, except for the dwarven cleric.
Yeah.
But it makes sense that that's how badly you missed. I don't do that all the time.
No.
But again, I try to do stuff that is making sense with a narrative of what the dice are telling me are happening, with what the actions that the players are attempting. Because that's really what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to judge and educate and be as fair as possible. And I think if you can do that with this rule, I think it can be an S.
You're right. Definitely. It can't be something that you use in every single game, and it just wouldn't be without.
I do it. I don't ever play without this.
Then you might play with some permanent or lingering injuries. On page 272 of the DMG, there is a D20 table that you can roll on. It's up to the DM's discretion of when this happens. Maybe it happens on a crit. Maybe it happens when the player reaches 0 HP. Maybe it happens when they roll less than 5 on a death saving throw. They're pretty bad on the D20, right? It's like losing an eye, breaking a leg.
The lower you roll on that table, the worse it gets.
Okay.
There are, if you do a Google search, a lot of people have lingering or permanent injuries. I'm sure there's a ton on DM's Guild. But it does say you can have like restoration cast on you and you can grow back your eyeball and stuff.
It's so easy in D&D to fix things.
Which is why this rule exists.
Yeah.
So what do you think about it? What do you think about adding injuries to your players? Cutting off feetsies?
This really, any house rule will either be to add fun, add something new, or add realism. And this is kind of just really for those players that would like to add a little more realism. They would like it to feel like a grittier game, even though we're playing D&D. We're going to make sure that the players are into this.
You do.
Because it's only hurting players. Like,
that's the thing.
When we attack bad guys, they die. unless it's the main villain, then maybe it'll be kind of fun to give him a lingering injury. But mostly this is for player roleplay and realism.
And players don't like when you affect their characters negatively.
Typically they don't. That's why I'm saying that it would have to be everyone's choice.
It's good for the role players, the people that really like getting into that stuff.
This guy sits on the situational for me. I don't use it in every game. Mm-hmm. I feel like this falls more under the critical effects.
Okay.
Like if someone's gonna really miserably critically fail and maybe critically fail twice trying to do something, then I'll do something like a permanent injury, but it wouldn't be very often.
Well, here's the thing. So I don't use it often, but it's always the toggle is always on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's there, and it's sort of like in one campaign we were playing, and my wife, she was a bard, and she did something incredibly dumb where this grizzly bear was attacking, and this thing crit on her and damn near killed her, and picked it up in its mouth and started running off with her. You guys eventually rescued her.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
But I did have her roll on that lingering, and she got a horrible scar.
Yeah.
So, and she was okay with that.
No, she had fun with making, being disadvantage on.
Yeah, you get disadvantage on persuasion, but you get advantage on intimidation with that.
Yeah, she started having fun with that.
So again, I sort of always leave it toggled on, because I don't necessarily view this as more. I guess it is sort of grittier, but that's not my intent.
No.
I want it to just add narrative stuff. You guys are heroes. You're going through harrowing adventures. It's dangerous. There should be some level of danger. 5e, like you said, it's so easy to cast Healing Word and find a cleric that's going to cast Restoration or Greater Restoration. I hover between a B and an A.
Yeah.
If you do this all the time, no. Try not to do that.
Yeah.
That's even doing it every time someone fails a death saving throw by 5 or less. It's kind of harsh, but
I think it's B. It's a solid choice. Could have some implications, but it's has narrative value.
Yeah, I like it. I'm okay with a B.
The B.
Our next house rule that's super popular is secret death saves. Rolling death saves behind the DM screen, and the Dungeon Master is rolling. So once a player character hits 0 hit points, when it comes back to their turn, you just stare at that player, look them straight in the eyes, and you roll a d20 behind the screen, and you keep tally of the death saves, the passes and fails. Pretty simple. So it's meant to sort of be we don't know if that person is close to death. We should go run and save them, because that's kind of what heroes would do with their comrades and their people in battle.
I can see that. So that's the part that I see is beneficial, is the DM's rolling, and the rest of the party don't know how good those rolls are,
right?
Or if they're saves. They could be fails.
They could be critical failures. That's two fails.
That's true.
So you don't know.
So the party just kind of needs to get there.
It gets
to them,
it
to
gets
the character.
It gets them in gear to react, because at that point you're sort of metagaming.
Yeah.
That's what it's supposed to get rid of, is the metagamers that are just oh, so and so's fine. He's only at 1 failed death save.
Yeah. When you see the saves, you're just oh, he'll be good.
Yep.
He just needs one more, and then they leave the party member.
Yep.
Now my problem with this is that I don't think it builds tension. There's this assumption that if players don't see the roll, they think the DM's making it up. Even if they completely trust this DM and would never think that, there's that thing in the back of your mind where we don't really know because it was behind the screen. And I feel like the tension is built more when you can see those rolls. When those fails come out and you're oh, and everybody knows, and when or if that character dies, there is no question and no blame. I mean, that's what I would prefer in my games, that players are not questioning whether I made up the roll or not. Never want that in their minds. Not even a hint of a thought of that. And I'm willing to sacrifice that little bit of metagaming in the earlier throws for that. But that's my opinion.
See, I hate the metagaming that does happen, where
Yeah.
they're like, oh, they've got 2 successes and no
We're gonna leave 'em.
failures. Just leave them, because that's not fun for the player.
No.
I've never used this at the table. I would never fudge my die rolls, and I would think that my players trust me to not kill one of their characters just for, I don't know, shits and giggles. I don't know where I really feel about this one. I like the idea of it.
Yeah.
I
This is D for me. This is absolutely never would do it.
See, I think I like it more than you. Like, for me, I think it's, if everyone at the table is okay with it, I think it's like,
Probably B.
it's probably like a B.
Yeah.
So maybe we meet in the middle.
I'll
Maybe,
go halfway for a C.
maybe it's
Yeah.
a C. I just, like you said, I just don't want my players to like hate me, because I'm just like, dude, I just rolled 2 nat 20s back here, and this guy's dead.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the other situation you come into, and they're like, yeah, right.
You're like, we know how you roll.
Yeah.
Wolf, I've seen you roll, Wolf. You haven't hit a 20 in 6 sessions. But you're telling me.
you rolled 2 behind the screen? Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the part of it that makes my sphincter clench a little bit.
I don't like it at all. But I'll land on C with you. It's a C. Next rule is bonus action potions. Rules as written, normally, it takes a standard action to consume a potion. This rule simply changes that to a bonus action, and if we want to administer a potion to an unconscious player, it still takes a standard full action. I did try using this,
Yeah.
and it does help out combat for early players. It's nice for early players.
Like new players?
New players. I will do this for new players. Well, they'll be confused when they go to drink a potion, and it feels like a video game to them, and they want to pop something out of the bag. To me, it's like, if it's not on your belt, like a wizard would have or an alchemist would have, just potions on their belt, then to me it's not a bonus action.
The only time I've ever used it was if in this super, super specific instance that you have a rogue that is playing the thief subclass, and they get that fast hands ability. So I would let them use...
Same, I would do that same.
Let them drink a potion using the bonus action, which technically they wouldn't be able to do. That's the only time I've ever used it. I put this at a B.
Sure.
I think it's not going to break anything too badly. It's just going to make combats a little bit smoother.
Yeah.
It's just going to tip things a little bit more towards the player characters. But if they're able to do it, so can my monsters. So,
Potion up, monsters.
yep.
Potion up, goblins. Let's do some initiative house rules. First one is popcorn initiative. We are going to roll our initiative one time to figure out who goes first.
Okay.
So our initiative is used, but that person is then, after they take their turn, that person is going to choose who goes next. They'll say, Devin, you go next. That next player, after they go, could even choose the DM to go next, if they so prefer. And then the DM would choose someone else until all turns are taken.
Popcorn initiative, you say?
Yeah,
I had never heard of this, but apparently it's a thing.
that's the thing.
It's a popular thing.
I've never played this way.
I would never play this way. This sounds terrible.
It sounds terrible because I feel like you would get lost in who took turns.
You'd have to have like a little token or something you could flip.
You would have to have tokens. I think I did read that as well, that people were using tokens to keep track of who had taken their turns.
And also, like, let's be real, like the monsters are always going to go last.
Obviously.
That's just never going to not, unless you're just like, I don't know. I could never see an instance with someone where you would tactically be like, okay, now the goblins go.
Okay, DM, you go next. Yeah, it's like if your intent was to make things easier, I don't think you're actually getting there. So this probably falls in that category of making more problems.
I don't know. This sucks.
This is D.
This is a D for me. I don't like it.
Sorry,
I don't like
popcorn. Sorry.
it. All right, we're not a fan of popcorn initiative. How do we feel about side initiative?
What's that?
This is a variant rule in the Dungeon Master's Guide on page 270. Essentially, what you're going to do is the player characters are going to elect somebody to roll a d20, and the Dungeon Master will roll a d20 as well. You add 0 modifiers to this, so you're no longer using your dexterity or anything. It's a flat d20 roll. Whoever rolls higher, you're going to break the players into one side and the Dungeon Master / monsters into another. Whichever side rolls higher, that side gets to go first. Everyone on that side goes first. If there's a tie, you do a re-roll. And if there's a third or fourth side to the combat, you would roll and then you'd go in that initiative order. And that is how initiative stays for the entire combat. You go side to side, back and forth. We did use this. We used the rules from Old School Essentials, which are slightly different than this. You roll a d6, again, no modifiers. But the difference here is that this initiative only lasts for 1 round. You're re-rolling initiative once everyone has gone on both sides. You're re-rolling initiative. So there could be an instance where the monsters go 2 full turns in a row and wail on you. We did this during the Keep on the Borderlands campaign. That was like I tinkered with like everything in that game.
I didn't realize we were doing that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if I just didn't notice we were doing it, maybe it's not that bad.
So that's the thing. So it's supposed to provide more tactics, right? Because once you get to go, everyone on your side, you get to go. And you can do combos, and you can plan, and you can do all this stuff. And the monsters don't get a chance to really interrupt.
That's what I remember when we were doing it, is that we were basically just deciding when we go. Or we could be like, no, I'll wait. You have a better opportunity right here if you take if you're right next to them and you can take advantage of what's going on and you go. I do like that part of it.
We do have to give the caveat that by basically neutering initiative where people are not rolling their dexterity bonuses, you could be that alert feat gets nerfed, but you're also messing with a lot of class features that mess with initiative and things like that. So just be aware that will happen. So maybe it is C.
Maybe it is C. This may come as a surprise to you, but when rolling a 1 or 20 when making ability checks or saves, they're not automatically failures or automatically successes. But with this house rule, they will be.
I feel like every single table I've ever played at uses this rule. There are always critical fumbles and critical successes in skill checks.
But now that I've played Pathfinder, I really don't know if I like this.
We're
not playing with the Pathfinder rules, but
no, I know I don't love this.
Yeah,
it makes me seem like a mean dungeon master.
No, but it means you have a 5% chance to always succeed at something, no matter what it is.
Yes.
So then you have to make sure that you're really making the right calls as a dungeon master with this house rule.
Yeah, so you can't be the dungeon master that's asking for a roll for everything, because one, they might not be able to succeed, so you just would be like, no, you can't try that.
Yeah.
Or two, they're so good at it anyway, you could just be like, yeah, sure, that happens. You just hand wave it. So you need to really be comfortable and smart about asking for skill checks from your players. So I don't know. I don't think this is like super game breaking, because again, every single table I play at uses this.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just don't personally love it.
Same. I don't really personally enjoy it, even with critical failures.
Because that's what happens, right? You're like the thief, and you're like really good. Because this is what ends up happening, right? Is the thief that's supposed to be picking the lock to the door is like, oh, like I can do this, and they roll a 1, and even with all their bonuses and modifiers, they only get to like a 14, and they needed a 15. And they're like, oh, crap. And then like you're like, oh, your lockpick breaks. And then like the wizard's like, I'm going to try to kick down the door with my skinny ass leg. And he crits. I guess the door blows off the hinges and just disappears down the dark corridor. And the wizard flexes his just rippling calf muscle and casts prestidigitation and makes his leg hairs blow afterwards. He's like, yeah, check out my fucking calves. I don't know, this actually sounds awesome now that I talk about it.
What do we think?
But it does lead to like ridiculous situations as well. So that's why I don't really love it. But this is going to go hand in hand with the next rule that we're talking about. So,
what rank?
I don't know. It's
B.
It's a B, I feel like. Like everyone uses it.
I'm being generous.
Yeah, you're all right. So you even want to give this a C.
Yeah, I'm giving it a B, and I'm being generous.
It's time to talk about the rule of cool. What the rule of cool boils down to is that it essentially lets player characters sort of bend and reinterpret the rules to do things that might seem implausible or a little unrealistic, all in the sake of, hell yeah, that's fun, let's do it.
Or maybe it sounds realistic, like it sounds like you should do this, but we're going to bend the rules to kind of make it happen.
An example of this will be with the Gust of Wind spell. When you're casting this, it doesn't say anything about doing damage. But if a player were to ask me, if I was the dungeon master, they'd be like, hey, can I fling that goblin into that stone wall over there using Gust of Wind and try to damage them. I would be like, sure, why not? That's not the intent of the spell. It's not necessarily what's written there, but it makes sense to what's happening in the situation. Sure, you can roll some damage. Or if I don't feel comfortable applying damage, I might be like, you can knock the weapon out of his hand if he fails a save.
I would even say, like, if they're being pushed the 10 feet and they fail the strength save by, like, 5, then sure, they'll take, like, a D6 or a D8 damage by getting clobbered up against the wall. I don't know what clobbered is, but it's a word now. You're welcome.
It's creative. It's getting your players to roleplay and think outside of the box. Of course we love the cool rule of cool, right? Right? Yeah. Right? I don't know, do we?
No, I hate it. No, it's S tier, man. It elevates the game so much when you can improvise in this way and interpret the rules differently to let the players have their fun. It's S tier.
Even though it literally breaks rules.
Even though it literally breaks rules. This is like outside of the parameters of this ranking system.
It has Rule of Cool has broken our tier ranking system.
No! Or would you put it at A?
No, it's an S.
It is an S tier.
It's an S. I encourage my players to do this stuff. I want them to challenge me as a dungeon master. Yeah. Push the boundaries of what you can do. I want them to be thinking creatively to solve these problems that I'm putting in front of them.
The next rule is during character creation when we're stat rolling. We roll the 4d6 and we drop the lowest value. That's the way that we play. But before we drop that lowest value, we also like to re-roll ones.
And you have to accept the second result. So if you're re-rolling your 1 and you roll another 1, you're stuck with that 1, right?
That's it.
I like this rule because I like to encourage my players to roll for their stats. I think rolling for stats is fun. You get a little bit wider variety, and just know that with this rule, you're going to sort of get slightly stronger characters. That's what it's going to do. You're going to get you're trying to guarantee that they're just not going to have a useless character.
True.
I'm like a psychopath, and I'll just be like, yeah, I'm going to run with this guy. He's got like his highest stat is 8, baby. Let's do it. But you're also going to have that one player that's really, really lucky, and they're going to have like 18 and like 3 stats. So,
yeah.
Them's the rolls.
What do we rank?
I think it's like an A.
Yeah. A. Solid. I use it in every game.
Let's talk about healing in 5e. We got a couple house rules coming back to back that talk about healing. First up is Gritty Realism on page 267 of the DMG. This is pretty simple. Short rests are now 8 hours.
8 hours.
Long rests are 7 days.
Woo!
How do you feel about that?
I think alone, this is jarring. I've never played with this rule, so I can't really fully attest to how well it works, but it just doesn't sound good. Like, it feels like I need to mix it with other survival and gritty house rules, really, to make it fun.
So you might be using tinkering with some other stuff.
Yeah.
I've never used this either. I'm intrigued by it. 5e, you almost never have downtime.
No.
Rules as written, you are just constantly at full health. There is no reason for you to leave dungeons. You're like, let's just sleep here all night. And as long as we barricade the door or set up do a spell or something. Like, when we played Ravenloft, we went through that whole campaign. It was like 30 days in the campaign world.
Yeah.
And it was like 2 years of our real life.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I was like, it just doesn't feel right.
So maybe it fixes that time dilation.
So I don't know. I think this would be incredibly jarring for most players,
Yeah.
but I'd be intrigued to try it, but I think it would mess with a lot of class features and stuff as well, because now you're getting into when spells come back, you're getting into when class features reset, and you really have to be smart about how you're planning your adventuring day. It's like, what can we get done in 8 hours? And then how much can we do before we're going to need a full week of downtime to rest?
And if you're stretching yourself in a quest, you may fail that quest because you got to dip out and rest for a week.
Yeah.
Because you're all spent on spells. And I feel like it fixes that issue of healing and how easy healing is with resting in 5e, but it's a little extreme.
Super extreme.
I would say C, but because I haven't played with it, I'll give it a B.
All right, I'm fine with that.
Does that sound good?
We'll leave it at a B. Yeah. If you've tried this, let us know if you like it or if you hate it, because we're like right in the middle with it.
But that leads us into our next one, which slows down healing a little bit, but basically will just turn your long rest into a long short rest. During your long rest, you have your opportunity to roll hit dice during long rest. There's no automatic heal. That's basically all it's doing. Is removing that auto full heal.
Yeah, this is called slow natural healing, and it's on page 267 of the Dungeon Master's Guide.
I've never played with this, but I like this. I like it better than
the gritty realism.
Gritty realism. I think this is an A for me because I love the mechanic of the hit die and short rests. Say players do want to take a long rest that isn't in a town. They still have to roll their hit dice. I really like that idea.
And it would still, and if they burn through all of their hit dice, then you're running into that thing where it's like, all right, we only have one more day of adventuring before we're going to have to hunker down for a few days anyway. So I do like this as well because, again, as a lover of downtime, it should, in theory, naturally create some downtime for your characters. So again, it's at least adding that pillar of play, which is almost non-existent in most 5e campaigns that I've played in. So I'm going to give this an A as well. I'd love to try this one. Let's talk about inspiration, specifically class-specific inspiration tables. This is going to require the Dungeon Master to create inspiration tables based on everyone's character class. And when you award someone inspiration, they're going to be able to roll on this chart and they get some sort of boon. For example, the fighter might roll and they might get a success or a result that says, hey, for the next battle, your crits will be on 18, 19s, and 20s, or just 19s and 20s. It improves their critical hit range. Or they might get second use of second wind. Or with a wizard, you could be like, hey, you're going to be able to cast your next spell at a higher level for free, without having to expend any extra spell slots. Or maybe they recover some spell slots. It is completely up to the Dungeon Master and how they want to create these charts. You can even work with your players to make sure that they're not super game breaking. The whole thing here is to make inspiration a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. And useful, used more.
I've never done this. I've always wanted to do this. The only thing that really holds it back is it just requires the Dungeon Master to sort of create these tables. It's a little bit more work.
Even if the tables were made, like, it's still more tables. Like, I'd use a lot of tables. I do like tables.
But would you keep these hidden from the players, or would you let them know?
It might be interesting it might be fun to let the players know what it could be, because they could, like, choose something. Because in...
that's right. They might not even have to roll. You just let them...
Well, they're using inspiration, so they could look at the chart and be like, oh, I'd really like to use this inspiration effect.
Okay.
Could I do that? I kind of like that. But it also is fun being up to the DM, because the DM can decide, has more control over it, right? It's not so powered if the DM has control over it. I don't know. I would have to experiment with it more, because it sounds like that narrative system again, where in the narrative system, players know what they can use their critical successes for and to do, and they can choose those things to do.
Oh, like
when they're making them
in the Genesis system.
Yes,
I mean,
in Genesis,
like the Star Wars Age of the Empire. I would almost give this an A just because inspiration rules as written sucks so bad.
Yeah,
it's just not fun to just get advantage, and most people, I can't tell you how many people just have unspent. I give out those nice coins.
Yeah.
They don't use it.
No.
So I think anything is an improvement on the base mechanics.
Agreed.
So
I wouldn't use this every session and in every game I play, so A.
All right, let's give it an A. Feel free to try it.
A lot of people also use the Improve Intelligence house rule, which basically allows players to use their intelligence modifiers to gain an additional non-skill proficiency or a language. I've even seen some of these rules say that if you have a +3, you could turn in the +3 and just gain a regular skill proficiency.
You still have the +3.
Yes, you still have the +3. You're not like giving it away.
Yeah.
But basically, you can't take, you couldn't take an extra language or an extra non-skill. That +3 gives you a regular skill proficiency.
And this goes both ways. It punishes you if you have a negative ability modifier in intelligence.
So you got to take them away.
I don't really care about this. I don't ever see it in my games where people are just like, everyone's stupid.
Yeah.
And I don't think getting an extra language or another like tool proficiency is like super game breaking or anything. Getting that extra skill point is helpful for sure. I just don't think I would ever use this at my table.
No, me either.
I
think they're trying to do the Pathfinder thing. Because with Pathfinder, you have an intelligence modifier, then you're basically choosing extra, like I'm sorry.
Oh, it's your trait. It's what you're proficient. You get the extra
You are
training.
choosing extra proficiencies based on your intelligence modifier, but it's balanced in Pathfinder. Yeah. So when you try to jam this into 5e, it's going to cause some problems.
Yeah, I'm going to say this is like a D. Just go play Pathfinder instead.
Yeah.
Where that stuff all works.
It got the big D.
Combat exhaustion. You'll find that a lot of the house rules in 5e sort of deal with combat and making dying or falling to 0 hit points a little bit worse than it is rules as written, and that is what this one does as well. If you drop to 0 HP, you're going to gain 1 level of exhaustion. This is going to subvert the Leroy Jenkins sort of play style.
And that's going to happen anytime you drop to 0.
Does it stack?
Well, it's like if you get up again and you drop again, you get another one on the level. So like 1 to 6, right?
Yeah.
So there is that chance that if you're going to get up 6 times, that you could just outright die, right?
Yep.
I use this in every game I run. I have run into that situation a lot of times where there's one player and they just can't stop themselves from. The situation is that player is running in and not thinking and not being cautious, and the whole party is drawn down like an anchor because of this person. And it's unfair to the whole party when this happens.
Because they're not playing smart, right?
And I also dislike when players who are knocked out and sliced up and destroyed and demolished, that they can just pop back up and continue fighting without any kind of penalty or debilitation. I don't like that cycle when it comes up. And it will come up. I just don't really enjoy it. I use this in every game I play. I see the downsides. There are a few downsides, and that's that that player may just continue to keep getting back up until they die. And they just, like, you have to warn them, this is going to snowball if you continue this.
And exhaustion's not fun.
No.
Exhaustion gets very punishing very
At
fast.
second level, it's affecting your combat ability. That player needs to be aware of the situation they're creating for the rest of the party. I feel like that house rule helps foster the realization of what they're doing, and has helped my games immensely for that reason.
I don't think I've ever used this in a game. I don't know if I would. It's a similar thing to like the lingering permanent injuries. It's as long as you have something that is going to help, so that players are going to try to be more smart with their actions, and that they know that there's consequences if they start doing dumb things. So I think if you use either lingering injuries or this, I don't think I would use both.
Probably not.
So I lean more towards the lingering injuries. I like that one where, again, it's always toggled on. And once something stupid starts happening, and I don't just like drop it on them usually. It's just like, I do the whole like, are you sure you want to do that? Are you sure about that? You sure about that? Like, I do all that. So I think one or the other would work.
This one's a B tier that I always use.
That's what I was going to say.
Because it solves a specific situation that I strongly dislike. It has some consequences, but I'm willing to make that sacrifice for those consequences. So, B tier. Next rule is fatal falling. Essentially, when you're taking falling damage, if it's in excess of your Constitution score, then you're going to automatically fall unconscious. If it's in excess of double your Constitution score, then you're dead.
This is to combat the falling damage that everyone hates in 5e.
It's pretty dumb.
Yep. So
you could fall. There's a maximum value, right, of damage that you could take.
Yeah.
And you could just take the minimum of that damage and fall 10,000 feet if you wanted to, and be fine.
Yeah. If you're high enough level, eventually, getting to the bottom of the mountain is as simple as jumping.
It's okay. Just jump.
So how do you feel about this one?
I like it. I've never used it, but I would implement this.
Same. Simple. I think it's A tier.
Especially because falling away from the rest of the party separates the party so far.
Yep.
And it turns into a new adventure of finding that person.
Yep. Which
So
can be fun.
they
but-
better be unconscious or dead, honestly. Because I don't know how else we're going to play this.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, no, I think this is A, maybe S.
Maybe yes.
Sure, this is S tier.
Put it back in S tier. We don't have enough S tiers.
Yeah.
It belongs there. Always use it. I don't see it hurting anything.
No, because it's still you're taking the basic fall damage and you're just adding a little bit more of a consequence to it, which doesn't exist. Rules as written right now.
Do it.
Improved flanking. Flanking itself, I believe, is an optional variant rule.
See.
A lot of people do use it, but they don't like to use the optional variant rule that gives you advantage for flanking because they think it's too powerful. So this is, you're just going to get +2 when you're flanking. So that is if you're on opposite sides of an enemy, you get +2 to hit.
I like it. It's kind of like Pathfinder.
Yeah.
Pathfinder's got a flat value for flat footing an enemy. And I really enjoy this.
A, S, what are you thinking? I think it's an A.
It is an A tier. Yeah.
Because I think there's going to be some people that want that. They want it to be even more powerful.
Yep.
And then Dungeon Master might want it to be more powerful because, again, we're talking about all this stuff like player-facing, but you have to remember that all of these things will apply to the monsters as well.
And there's not a lot of plus and minuses in the game of 5e anyway. It's just adding to your math. A tier. Then there's secret roles. These are secret player roles that are actually made by the DM behind the screen. These are roles that the player wouldn't actually necessarily know in character, whether they did well or not.
If they succeeded or
so,
failed.
like checking for a trap, being stealthy. You don't really know how well you're doing these things. So the DM would roll that check behind the screen with your modifiers and could either tell you how well you did or just stay silent about it and record it.
How do you feel about secret roles rolling behind the screen?
I've tried this. I've had mixed reviews on this because while I enjoy this as a DM, my players don't fully enjoy it. Only because I'm taking roles away from them. I think they just like to roll, and if you're not letting them roll enough, or them seeing the results themselves, then they start to get discouraged. And maybe that's only for my table. Maybe it depends on what table you're at. It really depends on if your players are okay with it and enjoy that. Like, this is a normal in-rules thing for Pathfinder, and it's great that it's in the rules because players just accept it.
But some people house rule it there and they
don't. The reverse,
they do the reverse. I've done this. I like it a lot. I don't think that the player should be aware of some of these things. You're trying to create this level of like realism at the table, right? It's like this fantasy nonsense, but like I hate it when the player's just like, oh, I'm trying to sneak up, and like I'm not sneaky. It's like you wouldn't know. And and I hate it when they because they get discouraged by the roll because they're like, I'm the sneaky guy, I'm the rogue, I should be able to do this, and I flubbed it. So they're mad immediately, and then they're just like, now they're metagaming.
Yeah.
I've had success with it, just doing it. It requires a little bit more bookkeeping by the dungeon master because you need to know
saving the values.
Yeah, you gotta have all the
You're doing that
ability
already for
modifiers.
other roles.
Yeah, you are. So I like it. I don't think that. I mean, players should be rolling enough that they're not getting that mad about it. I think players tend to be control freaks. So again,
not knowing is like, ugh.
yeah, and like for me, it's just like let's get into the experience of this. Like I don't want it to. It's not a video game. You don't know everything that's happening. Just roll with it. Just trust me as a dungeon master that I'm gonna do the right thing and I'm gonna make this fun for you guys. Like I'm not trying to punish you by doing this. But I know players don't like it, but I kind of don't care. I still do it anyway. For me, this is like an A.
I think I can agree with that. A tier, and it really depends on your players.
Obviously, if your players are just like, I'm not going to play any games if you do this, then just throw that out the window.
It applies to any house rule, I guess.
Yep.
Artifact magic items. These might be homebrewed. We might find some online. But basically, they're magic items that we give to players, and they level up with players. they have the same weapon, and maybe they hit milestones, and those milestones unlock special abilities or spells or things they can do with that weapon. I have used this to really encourage connection with character and plot. Like an artifact could be like a family heirloom that was a sword.
Gotcha.
Right? And it's like a very powerful family heirloom, but they couldn't fully attune to it at their current level, so they need to spend time unlocking and performing feats to like be worthy of fully. It's like if Thor were a teenager and were handed Mjolnir. Like, would Mjolnir fully accept him as the user? Like, it almost makes and creates a sentient weapon of sorts that is grown and building with you. But, this term of artifact item really comes from World of Warcraft has used this system. Matt Mercer has made an artifact magic item system, and they've used the same terminology, so we kind of just used it here.
I dig it. I think magic items should be magical, and you should break the rules of the DMG and the PHB all the time for that stuff. If there's I don't ever want to adhere to the rules for stuff that should be magical and weird and beyond your comprehension of it.
I do this sparingly. I don't do it for everyone. I do it for people who I think will really enjoy it.
I think it's a B.
B? Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe
it could be swingy with whatever you're home brewing, and maybe it's a little too powerful. But
that's a you problem.
That is a you problem.
I think if done correctly, this could be A.
Yeah.
So maybe A. Let's end on a positive here. Let's go A.
A
for artifact.
We had a ton of fun making this, folks. Let us know your favorite house rules, what you think is great. Please subscribe to Basic Liches for more content weekly. Told it for notifications for new videos.
Remember, these are just our opinions, man. We're not trying to ruffle any feathers. We're just trying to have fun here ranking all these house rules. But if you do, leave us a comment down below. We love reading them, and we'll comment back to some of them when we have time.
Thanks again for sticking around. Later, Liches.
Bye!